So I've made Oscar Fiasco videos in the last few weeks about Empire of Light and Babylon, two 2022 releases with high hopes for Academy Awards glory that ended up flopping big time in more ways than one. And get ready for The Sun, starring Hugh Jackman. That video is coming soon. But the truth is, films have been flopping at the Oscars going all the way back to the award show's beginning. Bad movies, good movies, and great movies. Citizen Kane is considered by many the greatest film of all time, and although it did well at the 14th Academy Awards and its number of nominations, 9, it famously only won a single award, Best Original Screenplay. Many think of Singin' in the Rain as one of the best movie musicals ever made, but did you know that film only received 2 Oscar nominations, Best Supporting Actress for Jean Hagen and Best Score, and lost both? An Oscar fiasco like Empire of Light makes sense because, at the end of the day, it's not a very good movie. But what happens when an amazing movie, a masterpiece, a work of art, goes unrecognized at the Academy Awards? Well, I get pissed, and then very confused. What's the point of the ceremony if they're going to allow a great film to slip through the cracks? We can often blame things like genre bias or poor box office performance, but what if a classic film has everything going for it, including rave reviews and sold-out crowds, and still receives 0 Oscar nominations? In the last year and a half, I've made some videos about the early days of Oscar, that fascinating period of time between the late 1920s and mid-1930s when the Academy Awards was still finding its identity. But from the beginning, their mission was clear: recognize great cinema. That first ceremony on May 16, 1929 gave us 2 all-timer Best Picture winners, Sunset and Wings. All Quiet on the Western Front won Best Picture at the 3rd ceremony. I love the clean sweep for It Happened One Night at the 7th ceremony in the top 5 categories, something that's only happened twice since. But in the first decade of the Academy Awards, there were a handful of huge snubs I would qualify as Oscar fiascos, and the first one I want to talk about is how in the hell did City Lights, that moving and stunning classic, Charlie Chaplin's most beloved film, not receive any Oscar nominations, especially in a year that gave us so many forgettable movies, including Best Picture winner Cimarron, a dull and stuffy western that hasn't aged well at all. 1931 was not in any way, shape, or form a competitive year in cinema. There weren't 5 other titles clearly more qualified to be nominated for Best Picture over City Lights. That goes for Best Director too, and Best Actor, and Best Actress. City Lights should have received at least 4 Oscar nominations and been the easy winner for Best Picture, and yet it didn't show up in a single category. How? Why did this happen? Hi, I'm Brian Rowe. This is the Awards Contender, and in today's video we're going way back in time to talk about one of my favorite films of the 1930s, City Lights, and why this all-timer classic was a flop at the Academy Awards. To start, let's go back to the project's beginning. Charles Chaplin is one of the most famous screen performers of all time. After growing his career in silent comedy shorts from 1914 to 1919, he co-founded United Artists, which gave him complete creative control over his films, like 1921's The Kid and 1925's The Gold Rush. His 4th feature, 1928's The Circus, was met with great acclaim and earned Chaplin a special honorary Oscar at the first Academy Awards for versatility and genius in acting, writing, directing, and producing The Circus. In 1928, the film industry was slowly moving away from silent films to sound films. 1927's The Jazz Singer, which implemented synchronized recorded music and lip-synchronous singing and speech, a massive hit with audiences. Still, Chaplin was skeptical of the so-called talkie, and he rejected the craze as he started work on his next feature, City Lights, starring Chaplin in the lead role, along with Virginia Cherrill, Florence Lee, and Harry Myers. Something that surprised me in my research, and you might not know either, is that Chaplin worked on City Lights for close to 3 years, developing the story for all of 1928, and then filming between the fall of 28 and the fall of 1930. His pursuit of perfectionism played a big role in the long shooting schedule, and upon the film's release in January 1931, the silent film era had long been put to rest. Everything was a talkie by then, and so you'd think audiences would have rejected City Lights, but thank God they embraced it, the film grossing over $4 million. A journalist at the time said, "Nobody in the world but Charlie Chaplin could have done it. He is the only person that has that peculiar something called audience appeal and sufficient quality to defy the popular penchant for movies that talk." So yeah, it was a huge hit, becoming the highest grossing movie actually of 1931, Critics loved it, audiences went wild for it. Chaplin later called it his favorite of his films, and directors such as Orson Welles and Stanley Kubrick put it in their top 5 films of all time. The story of a dewy-eyed tramp who falls in love with a sightless flower girl has enchanted movie lovers for generations, and it is today considered one of the greatest motion pictures ever made. But if you were to go by the 4th Academy Awards ceremony held on November 10, 1931, the event celebrating movies released between August 1st, 1930 and July 31st, 1931, you would think City Lights was a major bomb with critics and audiences at the time because it didn't receive any Oscar nominations. The Academy was happy to reward films from 1931 like A Free Soul, which won its star Lionel Barrymore the Academy Award for Best Actor, or how about Men and Bill, which won Marie Dressler Best Actress. Norman Taurog took Best Director for a movie called Skippy, and then there's Cimarron, Oh My Old Pal Cimarron, which got the distinction of being the focus of my video last year, titled The Worst Best Picture Winner of All Time? ? Yeah, if I haven't made it super clear by now, there was room at the 4th Academy Awards for City Lights, at least at the nomination level. So then why did Chaplin's 1931 film ultimately flop at the Oscars? Here are the 3 main reasons. The first and most important reason City Lights didn't make it in at the 4th Academy Awards was it being a silent film in an industry that had long since moved on to a world of talking films with spoken dialogue and synchronized sound. I believe rejecting City Lights at the Oscars wasn't a matter of the quality of the film, so much as it was a statement from the Academy that City Lights' silent aesthetics were just so last decade. Recognition for Best Actor, Best Director, Best Picture might have made the Academy seem like they were out of date and out of touch, given that pretty much everything by 1931 was a sound film. Also, they probably weren't happy that Chaplin takes things a step further in City Lights' opening scene by poking fun at the talking picture. Chaplin using a paper reed mouth instrument to play over the talking citizens and dignitaries as if what they have to say means nothing, like dialogue means nothing. Chaplin is absolutely making a statement here that silent film is the better art form, and Academy members likely weren't very fond of that. It could also be possible that the Academy just simply disqualified City Lights because of the silent elements, and therefore didn't think it was fair to compare Chaplin's film with the other sound movies, the same way The Jazz Singer only showed up as an honorary award at the first Academy Awards a few years earlier, the judges not wanting it to compete with all the silent movies. I mean, alright, fine, I get it. Silent cinema was all the rage in the 1920s, but not in the 1930s, so the Academy decided to just brush off City Lights like it doesn't exist. But my god, is that a stupid reason? Like, shouldn't the focus be on quality above all else? So what if it doesn't have synchronized dialogue? Could anyone in late 1931 really think Cimarron, East Lynne, Trader Horn, and Skippy were better movies than City Lights? It all reeks of elitism to me, honestly. So why else might the Academy have rejected the film? A second smaller reason I would argue is the film's slapstick comedic elements, which might have turned off some Academy members. Genre bias was already a thing right from the very beginning, and by the 4th Academy Awards, there might have been the thinking that dramatic films were more important than comedic films. I mean, there are a lot of comic hijinks in City Lights that go on for long stretches of time, like the tramp saving the suicidal man from drowning, and eating a big bowl of pasta while funny noises play on the soundtrack. Maybe at times the film just didn't seem prestigious enough, and so the Academy looked elsewhere, but I do think the comedy film Skippy winning Best Director pushes back against this theory a little bit. If Skippy was deemed worthy of a Best Director win, then City Lights should have at least been nominated. The third and final reason is that Charlie Chaplin wasn't a very well-liked figure in the industry, especially in the 1930s, mostly because of his rejection of the new age of sound films, but for some other reasons too. He was a known perfectionist who could be erratic and exhausting on film sets, Chaplin scheduling a whopping 534 days of filming for City Lights, but only shooting on 166 of them. Reportedly, his lead actress Virginia Cherrill suffered throughout the 2-year shoot, Chaplin demanding 342 takes of the scene where he buys a flower from her. He eventually fired Cherrill, thinking her to be an amateur. He hired Georgia Hale to play the role instead, but then later, in desperation, rehired Cherrill. Okay, so some of his practices in film production weren't great, and so it's possible that word trickled out to enough Academy members to not reward him for his on-set behavior. I mean, let's face it, this is not the only time the Academy snubbed Chaplin's work. Despite his honorary Oscar at the first Academy Awards, Chaplin saw his 1928 film The Circus receive 0 competitive nominations. 5 years after City Lights came his other 1930s masterpiece, Modern Times, which is also for the most part a silent film with only some talking elements, and guess how many Oscar nominations that one received? Yep, 0. Again, 0. You know when he finally got a couple of competitive Academy Award nods? In 1941, in the Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay categories, for his first all-talking film, The Great Dictator. That movie was also nominated for Best Original Score, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Picture. I think this says it all. The Academy was waiting for Charlie Chaplin to make his first true sound film, and once he did, the nominations finally came through, although still note that they snubbed him for Best Director. Thankfully, Charlie Chaplin's relationship with the Academy Awards did have a happy ending. Not only did he finally win a competitive Oscar in 1973 for the original dramatic score of Limelight, his 1952 film that didn't see a Los Angeles release until 1972. I know, kind of weird, right? But he also received another honorary Oscar a year earlier for the incalculable effect he had in making motion pictures the art form of the century. Chaplin reluctantly came back to the United States for the first time in 20 years to accept the prize, and at the 44th Academy Awards he was given a 12-minute standing ovation, which to this day remains the longest in Oscar history. Here's a small part of his speech.
I can only say thank you for the honor of inviting me here, and you're wonderful, sweet people.
No matter what ended up happening at the 4th Academy Awards, history has proven the Best Picture of 1931 to be easily Charlie Chaplin's masterpiece, City Lights. Watching it for the umpteenth time this week, I was enchanted all over again. The perfectly timed comedic moments, Chaplin's powerful, empathetic performance, and the gloriously heartfelt narrative of the tramp and the flower girl, one of the most moving romances ever put on film. That last scene. Charlie Chaplin's City Lights might have been a so-called Oscar fiasco, but this time the Academy got it wrong. Way wrong. This is, and will always be, a stunning motion picture for the ages. Thanks so much for watching! If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below, what are your memories of seeing the film City Lights? Do you think it should have gotten into the 4th Academy Awards ceremony like I do? What are some other older films you would love for me to explore in my Oscar Fiasco series? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.